Hi Taurus, welcome to your October 2018 Astro Update. It's Rena here. So Taurus, in October, there's a lot of activity or energy focus on your 7th house of committed partnership. But there's also activity in the 6th house, which is more about practical matters and less romantic. The 6th house is the house of work, the house of health, and the house of your daily schedule. So it deals with organizing your life in order to be more efficient. And so you have the sun in this sector as the month begins, and yet Venus is in that 7th house in your opposite sign of Scorpio. This is going to be the area where Venus retrogrades, so there will be some kind of review, and this could come in the form of deciding whether your marriage or your committed partnership is worth the effort. Can this marriage be saved? Mercury, at the time of the retrograde of Venus, which is on the 5th of the month, is also in the 6th house, along with the sun. So this could have you thinking about diet, thinking about some kind of health regimen that you want to enact in your life. And meanwhile, Venus is retrograding in the 7th house. Sometimes Venus can be about money issues, and Venus will be going back into that 6th house at the end of the month and going into the month of November until Venus goes direct on November 16th. So there is going to be something that connects with work eventually, but this could be happening right now because when I say right now, I'm talking about when Venus is in the 7th house, because the 7th house is also any type of partnerships. So if you work for yourself and perhaps you are feeling that you're doing too much and maybe you're not being compensated for what you're worth, that could be coming into your consciousness and you're kicking it over, you're thinking it over. So Venus is the ruler of Taurus. So when Venus goes retrograde, this impacts you even more than the average sign, except for Libra, of course, because Libra is also ruled by Venus. So on the 8th, we have a new moon in Libra, and that is the 6th house. So all of these kind of things that you've been reading about, maybe about health matters, and kind of like also concentrating on perhaps, that could be featured here. You could be turning over a new leaf, so to speak. This can also be a new job. Maybe Mercury in the 6th house is filling out the application or filling out the forms that are needed in order to, when you first start a new job, and that's what you're doing when the month begins, but then you start the new job. I mean, there are many possibilities. And then on the very next day, Mercury goes into the 7th house. And the 7th house, in addition to being about marriage, is also about legal affairs. So you could be like, taking out a divorce contract or whatever you want to call it. What do they call it? Is there such a thing as a divorce license? Or how do they put it? Contract license. You have a marriage license, but what do they call the divorce decree, papers, whatever? Looking into that, doing it, who knows? Considering it, perhaps. And again, it's important to note that this is obviously a general reading. This is not going to apply to every person who's a Taurus. Some of you have happy marriages or committed partnerships. Some of you are single. if you are single and you have all this seventh house activity, this could be that there is something connected to perhaps meeting somebody who has the ability to be a marriage partner. And when Mercury is in that seventh house, you may be talking to somebody, and it might even be casually, but that person you're connecting to at a deeper level. And it gets really deep. I'll get to that in a minute, because then Mercury goes into the eighth house, and that's really deep. The seventh house is more about the actual partnership, but not necessarily the individual psyche, which is more of the eighth house. So the Sun joins Mercury in that seventh house on the 23rd in your opposite sign of Scorpio. And the Sun has a healing influence. It has a very positive effect on us. And we kind of embody the energy of the Sun when the Sun goes into a certain sign. And, you know, it's funny because as I record this, we have the Sun in Virgo. And I'm trying to think, am I a Virgo right now? I have a moon in Virgo, so I'm always going to have a little bit of that Virgo energy or personality traits. But yeah, I noticed that when September rolls around, and even you could say late August, because that's when the Sun goes into Virgo, then I feel more serious about being organized and getting all my ducks in a row. And some of you may totally go along with that yourself. Well, when the Sun goes into Scorpio, we all become a lot more intense, don't we? Or that's how it should work. And for you, because this is in the seventh house, this can actually have a revitalizing effect on a relationship that is kind of teetering on the edge, on a marriage. And, you know, Venus being in that seventh house, as the month began, it could be a truce of sorts. And then, you know, Venus goes retrograde and everything is up for review. Everything is being put under the microscope, perhaps. And you're trying to decide, is this worth it? You know, am I getting what I deserve? And as I said, this could be in a monetary sense as well. Venus is connected with money. On the 24th, speaking of money, your sign has its full moon. So congratulations, Taurus. This is at 1 degree of Taurus. And this is a very interesting situation. I think this is one of the perfect examples of how these are general readings, because, as I said, this is at 1 degree of Taurus, this full moon. Now, if we're just looking at the chart as a whole, let's say you're born in the month of May, and your Sun is at 19 degrees of Taurus. Well, this would actually fall in your 12th house and not the first house, this full moon. For the vast majority of you, this is actually going to be in your 12th house. And because of this, there is a bit of a difference, because the 12th house is more of an internalized thing. So if you're giving something up, it's going to be more along the lines of some sort of vice, some sort of addiction, something that keeps you from being your best self, okay? And so this could be some kind of habit, bad habit, an addiction. The 12th house represents that. It's also a very psychic house. It's a very, intuitive house, and so you can have very vivid dreams, and they could contain information. So pay attention to your dreams around the time of the 24th of October. When the full moon is in your first house, this is more of an overt effect. In other words, it has that Aries flavor to it because Aries rules the first house. So it's much more about the self that others see. Whereas the 12th house is about karma. It's about your subconscious mind. It's not something tangible. It's not something overt or visible and things like that. When the moon is in the first house, if you're born around I don't know how early Aries can get. I would say around the 20th of April or 21st or so, whatever that 1 degree mark is, and even, like around there, depending on what year it is, this will fall in your first house, and it's going to be something connected to, actually, you'd have to probably be born at, it'd probably be the 0 degrees, so maybe even the 19th of April, the 20th. I don't want to just speculate because it is going to depend on the year. It will be in your first house if you're very, very early within those first couple of degrees, 0 and 1 degree. And because of this can be a time of you doing something physical, getting rid of some kind of behavior that affects you physically, because this is especially the case. So it could be some kind of a health situation because you have that activity in the 6th house of health. So this full moon in the first could even make you aware of certain things that are happening within your body. And I would say especially as it relates to working out or something like that, this could be good for detox too, because the first house is the body and the full moon can be a great time of purging and release. But it's also a situation of one way of life ending for you. Just like when you have your solar return or your new moon of, your solar cycle, you're kind of like starting a new chapter. Well, this is closing a chapter. And even, it's funny because even if the full moon is in your 12th house, it's going to be about closing a chapter because the 12th house is the last house. But here's another thing too, is that this is a heads up that in November, on November 22nd, there will be a full moon at 0 degrees of Gemini. So for all Taurians who are born after the first couple of days of Taurus, 0 or 1 degrees, you're going to have your full moon in the first house on November 22nd. And then on Halloween, the 31st, we have 2 transits. Mercury going into Sagittarius, which is your 8th house. That can be communications about some kind of money that is shared, that you share with somebody else. For instance, you could be talking about money issues with your spouse. Maybe they have some kind of issue going on, but it could be even that they get a raise or something and you're kind of planning it out based on their income, or you're signing a contract that relates to an inheritance or just some other kind of money issues. Again, if you're going through a divorce, this could be kind of like splitting things up. I don't know what you call that. Is that the estate, or is that just when somebody dies? Whatever it is, you could be dealing with that. And It's also about diving deep with a partner and burying your soul. So you're having conversations that are not shallow, that are very intense. You know, the 8th house is Scorpio's house. So the conversations are going to be along those lines. Maybe even the meaning of life. Because Mercury's in Sagittarius, which is a philosophical sign, and the 8th house is a metaphysical house. So combine the two and do the math. And on the same day, Venus retrograde goes into your 6th house. Now, this is an interesting scenario. Have any of you had an affair with somebody in the workplace that has affected your marriage? And so that person is coming back into the picture. Venus retrograde can bring people from your past, especially lovers, back into your reality. And that can be something that you're dealing with a partner. And maybe you're having a real heart-to-heart with your partner, your committed or so-called committed partnership, and explaining why you had that affair and what was missing in your relationship with your partner. And meanwhile, this person may be coming back onto the scene. Maybe they, it's a coworker who got transferred and now they're coming back, and you have to deal with this. Whether or not you have another go-around of an affair, that's a different story, but at least you might have to deal with them yet again. Okay, that's what I have for you, Taurus. So I hope that you enjoyed this. And if you'd like something more in-depth that is tailored to you specifically based on the time that you're born, please check out my natal chart interpretation below. And I have a modified version that just includes the astro trends for you in the coming year. Some of the, major things or themes that are happening for you in the next 12 months. And I wish you all the best. Take care. Bye.